I'm Mo. I didn't just wake up, but I feel like I just woke up. And today I think I'm going to do a little 24-hour reading vlog. Because last week or 2 weeks ago, I got Something Is Always Happening Somewhere, a novella by Kelly McClure. This was the first book that I ever pre-ordered, so it is kind of a book first for me and a booktube first for me, and I thought it would be fun if we read this. It is quite short, and you can see a little clip of me opening the book. I got this book mail and I'm super excited for it. I have never done this before. It's a new book experience. I pre-ordered a book. I wanted to open it now. Ta-da! So I pre-ordered Something Is Always Happening Somewhere, a novella by Kelly McClure. Kelly McClure is a writer and reviewer who works out of New Orleans, and I actually know her on Instagram, and we used to live in Brooklyn at the same time. I would see her from time to time on the street, but we never actually interacted that much except online. I still follow her on Instagram and I follow what she's up to. She has a little free library in New Orleans, and I'm super excited next time I go to New Orleans to visit that little free library. And I'm super excited to read her first published work, Something Is Always Happening Somewhere. So I pre-ordered this book. I've never pre-ordered a book before, but I love novellas. It was a great experience. I pre-ordered it from bookshop.org a couple of weeks before it came out. It let me know when it was shipping, and I mean, like normal stuff, but it just felt great to know that I would soon have this in my hands. So let me read you the back of the book. I don't usually read the back of the book, but let me read you the back of the book. Dale Travers and her wife Gina moved from their teeny apartment in Brooklyn to a newly mortgaged ranch-style home in Long Beach with the hope of living there forever. When one tragic night changes everything, Dale attempts to pick up the pieces, but quickly realizes that life is a dark and terrifying place without the one person who gave it any meaning. So this, I think, is a psychological horror. I don't know if it has any other horror aspects in it. It already sounds sad and creepy. So I'm super excited to read this one. I think this is a psychological horror. I think it has horror aspects. It could just be a hard-hitting kind of book. It has that very like rubbery cover, but I love the cover design. I really like the color. Very on trend, I think. I wanted to open it with you, and now we did. It's only 130 pages. It's super cute. I love it. I'm super excited. So I just wanted to pop in here and start this vlog. It is 8:30 in the morning on Wednesday, May 25th. I have errands to run. I have a reading to do. I'm also reading The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. I read that this morning for my morning 45-minute read. I try to read every morning for a half an hour to an hour just to kind of get the day going. And if I end up finishing this, I'll probably read more of that. I have cleaning to do. I have chores to do, and I have videos to film. My husband is going into the office today, so I am home on my own, and I have no car. So I can't do anything big and I can't go too far afield, but I can definitely do my errands and my chores today. And I will take you along with me. am 55 pages in to Something is Always Happening Somewhere, and wow, this book is depressing. If I had known how depressing this book was going to be, I might not have picked it for my only day off this week. I might have chosen to read it another time. It is a horror. I was a little unsure as to whether it is a horror, and it does get fairly graphic, but the graphic nature that I have read so far happens in the first like 5 pages. And then the rest is kind of dealing with the aftermath of those events. So our main character, Dale, comes home to her wife. Something's wrong. A very big event happens. And then the rest of it is kind of Dale dealing with the aftermath and having to figure out how to live her life now that everything is different, which it says on the back. It's not as quick paced or as fast paced as I thought it was going to be either. It is a pretty dense book. The margins are pretty small. The font is pretty close together. So although I thought this was going to be like a really quick breeze through, because of the subject matter and because of the actual text, it's a little bit slower than I originally anticipated. I think it's really well done. At this point, I don't know what's going to happen because our big tragic event happened, like I said, in the first 5 to 10 pages. Now we're just dealing with that, but we're dealing with it on a very day-to-day level, minute-to-minute level, and that's partly why it's so depressing. But I don't know where's the book going to go? I'm not even half of the way through. I'm only a little over a third of the way through, and I don't know, are there going to be more events? Is something always happening somewhere that we're going to start following? Right now we're only in one perspective and we're only in this one kind of timeline of action. So I'm really wondering what the rest of the book is going to be about. But I think the writing is good, and I think the character is interesting enough and had enough of an interesting response to what happened that you want to stick with her and find out where she's going and what's happening next. I am going to continue reading this. I also made the bed, did some laundry, did some dishes, made some calls that I needed to make, and I'm about to go out in a little while and pick up some things that I need to pick up. But when I read some more, I'll let you know. I had intended to read this whole book on the 25th, but it is now May 31st, and I have read the vast majority of this book. I just have to finish the last first 14 pages. So I have read 116 pages of this book, and it's definitely not what I was expecting. I thought it was horror, and the first few chapters, I would say, are horrific. Dale is our main character, and there's an event that happens in her life that is horrific and extremely graphic, and definitely trigger warnings for assault and rape and abuse and murder and a bunch of horrible, horrible things. And that happens all in the very beginning, and I don't think that that is necessarily a spoiler. Maybe it's a mild spoiler. But once these events occur, it changes Dale's life completely, and she has to kind of rethink her entire existence. Let's try that so the light's not blinding me. She has to rethink her total existence, and in a way that is still horror, a way that is still a horror book, more of a psychological horror and not a murder, death, destruction horror. After those first beginning chapters, the whole rest of the book is kind of just her day to day and how she's coping and what's happening and the people in her life and how they are in her life, why they're in her life, why maybe they haven't been in her life before. And it's very mundane in a lot of ways. And now I'm 15 pages from the end, and I just do not know how it's going to wrap up. It gives you like an anticipatory feeling that maybe something terrible is going to happen again. Maybe there is more to the horror of this story than we can tell. Maybe the middle section has lulled us into a relaxed nature. Or it could just end. Like, I'm not really sure. It's definitely giving me a lot of like dread and anxiety. And I think the book overall gave me that feeling. And that was why I didn't end up finishing it on the 25th. That was a day off, and I wanted to relax and enjoy it. And this book just gave me nightmares and was too heavy for me to finish reading that day. Again, I'm enjoying it, definitely, and I will check back in when I'm done, but I wanted my day off to be nice as well, so I stopped reading it. And then I've read it a little bit since then. I'm going to finish it in this third session, and I will let you know my final thoughts. I have finished Something is Always Happening Somewhere, a novella by McClure. Whew. If I had to describe this book in one word, the topics in this book, the overall vibe of this book, the beginning of this book, the ending of this book, I would use the word bleak. This was a tough read. It was not what I was expecting. I thought it was going to be more of a overtly psychological horror, which I do think it falls into that category, and there were some extremely horrific parts in the beginning, and the ending is pretty horrible, but it just didn't go where I thought it was gonna go. When I last checked in 15 pages from the end, I worried about how the ending was gonna be, and in a way I was right to worry. It wasn't the big traumatic episode that I thought it might be, but it definitely was a twist that I wasn't expecting. It was a really depressing book, so it's hard to say that I enjoyed this book. I'm glad that I didn't read it all on the 25th on my only day off. I'm glad that I didn't go into that deep depression, because I do think that this book could have sent me into a depression. I think this is an incredibly sad, tragic, bleak, distressing book. I feel like it's also a little bit like sad porn, like think of the worst things that you can possibly think of the worst feelings you have, think of the most terrible lows and read about them in a book. So that's not really the kind of book that I enjoy. It intrigues me as to why McClure wrote this book, what the intention was. Was this kind of a cathartic exercise? Was this something to get those feelings out of you? Or was this just, I'm gonna write the saddest, most horrible book I can come up with. I'll be really interested to see what she does next as far as novels or novellas. I'll be really interested to see what other type of stories she wants to tell. As far as the writing goes, I think it was very compelling. I've read quite a few amateur writers this year, either poetry or novels, or I've read quite a few novellas that felt like amateur writers. And this had a hint of that, like maybe it needed a little more work, like a little more development, a little more editing, but it also had a propulsion in it that just you kept wanting to read it. Like even though it had that anticipatory feeling that I don't like, even though it had animal violence, even though it had horror elements, even though it had elements of being like very mundane, like where you put your keys when you come into the house, like what you're having to drink. It kept me reading the whole time. There wasn't a point where I didn't want to know what happened or where I found the writing to be boring, even if it was about mundane daily tasks. I'm really interested to see what happens with this author next, because I feel like there's a lot of ways that she could go and ways that she could grow, and I want to follow that journey. I was super happy to have read my very first pre-ordered book. I'm happy that one day I will get to visit her little free library in New Orleans. Let me know if you've read Something Is Always Happening Somewhere. Let me know what you thought of it. Let me know if you feel like it was as bleak as I feel like it was, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much. Bye.